We're going to start by asking you to say your names and where you're from.
All right, my name is Ava Angeletopoulos, and I'm from Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Spiro Stamos, and I'm from Modesto, California.
And you two are married.
We
Yes.
are.
Yes, we are married.
Yes, we
We are married.
All right. Now we
We've
are
known
married.
each other for a long time.
Yeah. No, that's the funny thing when we're talking about FDF. We met at FDF, and we knew each other for a few years before we got married, quite a few. But I remember the first time I saw her at FDF. She didn't even know who I was. In 1984, that was your first FDF,
Yes.
huh? I remember seeing her giant group of 30 people in her group, and this little one, she's the smallest one, running around, bossing everyone around. She was still doing it then, but she was gorgeous. I remember how beautiful she was. And I remember just being captivated by her and just enthralled by the fact that this little tiny person was running around bossing the whole community around. How old were you then?
You're not supposed to say our ages.
No, I said then, not now. We're
But
old
people
now.
will
The grade
figure
gives
it
it
out.
away, okay?
84. Oh, gosh.
84.
That was,
So yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
she was young.
And tell us what churches you were from at that time.
I went to St. Nicholas Northridge, and then
I was in Modesto the whole time.
Okay.
And then it was her ginormous group of 30 dancers.
it was 20.
Oh, 20
20-ish.
something against 4 boys.
Yes.
And we won. The 4 boys did.
How,
So that's
how
always
did
been-
you feel about? Did you meet him that year?
No, our parents met actually.
Yeah.
Our mothers kind of connected because they were both new parents for FDF or whatever.
Tell
But-
us who your mothers are individually, because they're kind of famous in FDF.
So my mom is Bertha Angels. Last couple of years, she's been a costume judge. And my dad was actually very involved in FDF. He was a parent rep back in the day when we had different reps from different communities. So that was kind of how we got more involved in FDF than just being a dancer or director.
Okay.
Yeah, and my mother is Dina Stamos, and she's been involved in costumes for several years and been a costume judge for, I don't know, 20 years.
A long time.
25 years maybe. But yeah, and she was also my director, which is always a lot of fun.
Oh, tell me about that.
I would rather not on camera because I don't want any evidence. But no, my mother is a saint because she survived. My best friend and I being dancers in her group, she used to bribe me to come to dance practice with Star Wars action figures. That's how I first got to go to dance practice. I would not
Sounds
go.
about right.
I thought it was the geekiest thing in the world, and that's how she bribed me to go. Every time I went to practice, I got a little action figure.
And your brother was older, right?
Yeah. My brother didn't dance. My sister did back then. My brother still can't dance. He didn't. Gene skipped people in the family, and he's the one that skipped. But his son dances. So it's kind of generational now. My mom started, I think I started dancing in 76, 77. And then now my nephew's 11, and my niece is 15, and they both dance. My nephew in Modesto and my niece in Fresno.
So you were in the very first FDF?
No, I wasn't. I was, Modesto didn't go. My first FDF was 1980.
Okay.
And I got up here, was in San Jose, and I was overwhelmed by how big it was, so I didn't dance. I was afraid. I was with our priest, Father John Angeletopoulos, and my group was only like 6 kids, and I just thought it was the biggest thing ever, and freaked out, and I'm like, I don't want to dance.
What about you, Ava? What was your first?
My first FDF competing was 1984. We went in 83 as just to kind of observe and see what it was. And then my parents kind of bribed my sister and I. Not bribed, but they were like, you have to at least try it a couple of times. If you don't like it, then you don't have to stick it out. But we were like, okay, we went and we learned one of the hardest dances ever. We could barely teach our kids these days. And we loved it. And then kind of went from there. Started as a dancer, and then a couple of years later started assistant directing, and then
Wow.
Yeah.
Were either or both of you on the management group at any time?
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Tell us about
I
that.
was on the management team. I was the managing director in 1997 for FDF in Ontario. Still had the tent back then.
Oh, yeah.
So
Don't forget the tent.
Heard about the tent.
yeah, the tent was always an experience. So yeah.
And not only that, the year that she did it was it the first time that the Archbishop
yeah.
came and his whole entourage. So we had, I think in 87, we had all of the Archbishop and all the bishops, and then that didn't repeat until 97 with the tent and everything. Yeah, it was It was huge.
It was
Tell
big.
us about the tent when you had FDF in the tents.
Actually, the tent was fun, only just because it made everything all in like kind of one place and close. So, I don't know. It was interesting with all of the acoustics and everything, trying to get all the dances, you know, the sound good quality, well, you know, stuff like that. But
Actually, an interesting thing too is her god sister is a graphic designer,
Mhm.
and she designed the logo for FDF that year. And the theme they used is the circus tent, like a
greatest
circus,
show on earth.
greatest show on earth.
Oh, fun.
And there's a carnival in Greece, from Naousa, which is in northern Greece, Macedonia. And it is kind of a theatrical thing where they put masks on and they dance with swords, the boulas. It's a very famous from Apokrias, which is the celebration of Lent. They go into Lent. But it's kind of like this whole circus theme. It fit into it. And she incorporated that into the logo with the tent in the background. It was, you know, great
It's
way
sort
to...
of a Mardi Gras kind
Yeah,
of thing?
it's similar. That's pretty much what it's like. Very, very, I guess.
We tried to put a play on it
Yeah,
because we weren't
playful
going to be
kind
in
of
the
logo.
tent, and so it was like, okay, well, we're going to be in the tent. We can't do much about it. We might as well take advantage of it.
That's
So
fun.
we
And
kind
what
of
was her name?
Maria Argyropoulos.
If you could say the graphic designer that year was Maria. If you could.
Oh, the graphic designer was Maria Argyropoulos,
Thank you.
and now Zarian.
So we're talking about tents and FDF. The first year we had the tent was in '86, and that year in San Diego, like I was saying before, it's usually sunny, nice, beautiful weather. That year was horrible, torrential rains, floods the entire parking lot and the tent. And one of our parishioners, a father of one of the dancers, his Cadillac is floating away, floats into the tent. The stage that we were dancing on was floating out of the tent. I mean, just craziness. The best part is we had done about half of FDF at that point.
Right.
So we'd already danced, but this is Saturday, like the busiest day,
Big day.
and we don't know what to do because none of the older kids have danced. And I think it was the Kiwis were having a convention in the hotel too, and they were very generous and actually gave us a banquet room so we could compete and continue the dance competition. But it was the best image ever of FDF. It's this brand new Cadillac floating in the tent and the stage floating away. And we thought, oh,
What did
FDF's
you do
over.
about the stage? Did you have to just run around and?
But no, they
Pick
actually
it
ended
up,
up
or-
moving. Well, that stage was gone. I mean, they had to go salvage it, but they put a new stage on the floor and the carpet, and we just danced. It's made do.
Wow.
It was kind of
Back then it was on the floor. The stages
Yeah,
were,
but back
we
then
didn't
it was
have raised
different. We didn't have
stages.
an
It was
Oh,
on the
I-
floor.
that's what it
they
meant.
put
It
a
wasn't a
hardwood
raised,
floor, and then they had bleachers. The audience, instead of being way back in chairs and the dancers being up on a stage, they surrounded the dancers. So there were bleachers on three sides, and everybody was right almost on top, and it just created, I would say, like a more sense of intimacy because there's energy was there. It was more exciting for everybody because you were this close to the dancers instead of being this far away.
It was also a lot smaller with people.
Yeah, you know what? You'll hear people say that. So we both have been on the managing director team. We've both been on the executive council. I mean, in pretty much every different position, board of trustees over the years. The numbers, I used to do a lot of the logistics for FDF. The numbers, they keep saying, oh, FDF was smaller then. No, FDF at that time, one of the largest FDFs was in '87 when it was in Anaheim Hilton. And so FDF has been huge for a long time. It hasn't just grown and become this giant thing that's taken on its own life. It's been that way for a long time. The only thing I would say that's changed over the years is the intimacy. It used to be a lot more intimate. That's how we met. Like we talk about that. A lot of people met their spouses or their significant other at FDF. That's how we met. It's still a social thing. That's what keeps this thing going. The kids, that's what they look forward to the most. They want to go and they see their friends that they only get to see once a year.
You don't get to see them all the time. You see them once a year. You connect with them. There's something in common that you don't.
Is
get
that
to
how
do.
how often you two saw each other at first, Ava?
Yeah.
Was-
Yeah.
Yeah, we only saw each other. Well, we started once as we got older. We were on the management teams, and so that's how we became closer. And,
And
stuff
I
like
moved
that.
to LA too.
Oh, that helped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I moved
And
to
then-
Northridge.
We were on the management team together, and then I think we actually danced
Yeah, we danced together
when we
in
were
a group down there.
in Pasadena.
Yeah, the Terpsichoreans. That is one group that probably is responsible for more marriages in FDF. So the director, Nick Varvitsiotis, passed away now a few years ago, but he was one of the original international dancers. Just an awesome man. he wanted to create a group where all these young adults could go and just make a social event out of it. And he did, and that's where he had this group in Pasadena, and it was mostly young adults. And that was his whole purpose was to make something that was social, bring these people together. And I think dozen people got married from that group alone.
And that wasn't an FDF. That wasn't a parish group. That was the group.
That was a parish
It was a
group
parish
that
group.
competed
Okay.
at FDF, but it was they opened it up a little bit, so it wasn't just people from their community; it was people from other communities as well, and so that's why we joined.
Yeah.
Tell me a little more about Nick. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, Nick Varbitsiotis. So Nick was a judge at FDF for many years. He was one of the original international dancers. There was Intercession, these groups that started Intercession, yeah. That started back in the 60s. And the core group of like the judges, George Nichols, Ann Sirota, Renee, they all met there. And that's how this thing kind of got started. Ethan Karras was a really big personality in this whole Greek international dance folklore thing. And he brought all these people together and got them started. And they're kind of the seed of where FDF, the judges and directors of the early communities.
Well, they built a lot of the programs, I think,
Yeah.
in Southern California at least.
A lot
They
of
did
them.
that. Ethan Karras was a big part in the Northridge community. He kind of got everybody together and said, this is something that we should do. But
Yeah.
I think Anna and Renee, they were more just on the judge part of it.
But yeah, a lot of the early judges were all from that group that met back in the 60s, I think, 70s. And Nick was one of them. And I think Nick hit a point where he was like, okay, I've done this judging thing, but I really want to get back. And what made him happy, I think, is getting the kids together and dancing. So we're talking about it with Nick Varbitsiotis. He was a judge, and he finally just felt like he contributed a lot that way, but he wanted to go back, and he started this group with this whole expectation of, I want to get these young adults now that started as kids at FDF, and they kind of were in that middle ground where they weren't not judges, they weren't directors, and they weren't dancing anymore, and kind of create this group where they could all come together and be social. And it was, when you're with that group, it was a social thing. It wasn't just dancing. It was go hang out together, do things, and make it more than just dancing.
Do they still have anything like the Terpsichoreans?
They're younger kids now because they kind of kept the name.
Well, no, but the group like that concept.
A group that's outside of.
Well, I think most of the people that dance, that go back, like a lot of them will leave for college and stuff, but then they'll come back and they still want to have that element of that program part of it, so they go back. And I think like in LA they do that. Yeah, but
there's not a group like that anymore. I think that a lot of that vision was Nick's, where he did that.
So let's change the subject.
Yep.
Let's talk about what management group, what you feel like it did for you and for other kids that participated in that at that level.
Okay. You want to start? I'll start real quick and then probably get her fired up. But it was a great experience because up to that point, I came from Modesto, which is a small little town. And we were very active there. I was involved with all the youth groups, Goya. I was the president of Goya, I think, at one point. But FDF is such a larger scale of venue. I mean, everything, there's literally 3,000 participants. And that's a lot of responsibility. When we were put in charge, I started out being on the management team and gradually grew in responsibility. One thing I know we were just talking about with Peter Priovalis is he started something years ago, 20 years ago now. It was the Covey Leadership group. So he brought in some outside consultant to teach us some leadership skills. And it was kind of the first time I was exposed to anything like that. I had assumed some leadership roles, but then now we're working together as a team and we're going through this training, and it was kind of just broadened my perspective on everything. And it helped, not just that, but progressively being exposed to different things and then greater responsibilities in the leadership, and then moved up to running FDF and then being on the board of trustees, where just the scope of everything helped me now for all my future, when in things, my career in the military or my job now, those skills and those kind of people skills and management skills,
Even
really,
the exposure.
yeah, the exposure
Different
itself.
things that you wouldn't get to do every day.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're involved in something like that, you go to school, you get involved in clubs or whatever, but off to college, but this kind of gave you that,
Well,
like, you can do this. You are able to go out and find, a venue or whatever it might be, an activity for the
And
kids.
was Peter still involved?
yeah, when we started, for
Yeah,
sure.
when we were,
I mean, he's the one who brought me in. You too, I imagine. Kind of invite us to participate. We were very active, both of us in our respective communities, and he saw that we were leaders in those communities and said, "Hey, come give this a try." And like for me, I'm just thinking, I went from being a small kid in a small town to negotiating contracts with the Marriott or the Hyatt on a corporate level, for hundreds of thousands, $1 million, what we're looking at. Those are the budgets we were dealing with, and how do you do that? Well, this is how. And I had some, leadership in Link Paris help really take me and walk me through this. And it was great because these are people that had been doing it all these years, and we were the younger generation. I think one of the first younger generations to move up. And their experience, they passed that down to us and said, here's how you do it. And you're talking about everything was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, when she did it and when I did it the year before over here in San Francisco, these were huge venues. We had 3,000, 4,000 people coming to FDF, and it's overwhelming if you don't have help and you don't have a team that you can rely on. And that's something I think we both.
Well, it's nice to know that somebody's giving you that chance too.
Yeah.
Because not every day you get that
We were young.
experience. And I think even like in '96, right?
Yeah.
We did different elements of things, but it kind of gave you the steps of how to organize, your life or whatever you're doing. I don't know. I lost track of that.
Oh, no, it's overwhelming to do this whole thing because that's what a lot of people come to FDF and they just see the finished product. And they'll come and everything's set up for them. The venues are set up. The kids, they don't really have to worry about much. But from our side of it, we're running around like chicken with our head cut off.
It's
Like,
and it's exhausting. I mean, you don't sleep.
We don't sleep.
Basically for a week.
If you're on the management team, anybody that's done it realizes.
You get there on Wednesday and you don't sleep until Tuesday. It's pretty much the whole weekend. But because there's, and depending on what position you're in, as a managing director, you're in all the different places. Even though you have people to do things, you're still checking on all those things and making sure it's running and whether or not opening ceremonies is going to start on time. Do you have all of the officials that you need to have there? Or, no, there's still a dinner, you got to run back and say, you've got to cut dinner short, we need you there at 7, or if your security is too tired, then you're like, well, go to bed, I'll walk the halls tonight,
But
but those are all things. Church needs to be set up. There's all these different elements that, people don't always realize, like you're saying, it's just, you go and it's done.
Wow. Do they still have management team?
Yeah, they do. You can't run FDF without a management team. The difference that I see, and I was just going to make a joke about it, is, FDF is a family event, which is true. It's one of the few venues where you go and it's, Yaya and Papu, the grandparents all the way down to the 5-year-olds, everybody's participating. But what they don't tell you is when you volunteer for the management team, it's a family event because the whole family's going to help. Her parents, she was talking about her parents, they were running around helping. I was not going to be allowed to sleep when she ran it. And everybody, your whole family, her sisters got sucked up, friends, Kubati. You're like, guess what? You're helping out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it is. It's a thing.
What's it like being directors? You co-direct a team?
Yes.
Now we do.
So we both, what year did you first start directing?
I want to say 86, 87. I was like assistant, but.
And mine was 84.
And when did, if you could contextualize it, when did you start directing together?
That's actually just more of a recent thing.
Yeah, I didn't, when she came up and was dancing with me, in 96?
I danced, yeah.
She danced with me, but she wasn't directing with me because I had to show that I was in charge. I'll pay for that later, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
No, we didn't start directing until.
Probably like
what?
6 years ago.
Yeah, about 6 years ago.
Took our first group on together.
Yeah.
It's always interesting. We have very different
styles
and styles of what we think should be.
How old are the kids that you teach?
They are middle school age, so 6th to 8th grade.
We started with
9th grade.
high school and college kids.
Yeah.
Together, when we started directing
They're like
together.
11 to 15 now.
Yeah.
But we used to all have adult groups, but now we have little guys.
So do you always agree on what dances you want to do? How do you decide that?
Rochambeau? No.
Well, we do have the love of it, and we do have an idea of, with the research, we do a lot of research together, so we kind of have, so it's good to have different opinions and perspectives. But
yeah, I think that's
we
actually a strength, that we do have different perspectives, so then we can do the things that we do agree on are usually stronger or better because we're looking at things from two different perspectives.
Do you go to Greece and study, or?
Well, she's gone more than I have
Yeah.
lately.
It's a little bit of both. It's knowing contacts, and especially now with technology, it's so great. You can reach out to people. But we have people come do workshops, or we'll go to workshops. I mean, we've pretty much been all over.
We'd like to do that
the
now.
United States, I would think.
Oh yeah, workshops. We go everywhere throughout the United States. She's gone to
Okay.
Greece several times. But I think for us too, we find, because the kids are here, to bring somebody from Greece is more helpful, because we can tell them things all day long. But then when they see this expert come from Greece who's interacting with them and talking to them about things that are personal to them, that's their love also, it impacts them in a whole different way than if we just repeat what we've learned. And
Right.
I think we both kind of like that, and like Christos, when he came, we had a director, I think he's a judge now, but he came.
Researcher.
Papa Costa?
Yeah, Papa Costas. He came over, and the first one, and he's just judging the kids, not judging, but evaluating where they're at.
No, it's okay. Go right ahead. If I ever do that in the future, ignore me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I was going to say that when Christo came, he started interacting with the kids, and he grabs a dowly, a big drum, and he starts playing it. That was the first thing he did. The kids had never experienced anything like that in practice, and they just got so excited and energized that it was great. It kind of inspired him, and said, that's what it's about. Just this kind of organic interaction between the kids. It's not supposed to be just dancing. Probably everyone has told you this when they were interviewed. Dancing's not just about doing some performance up on the stage. It's really living it, feeling it, and enjoying it, and sharing it. That's what we do. The funnest part of FDF for us is the after hours when we all go out and hang out and dance. And that's kind of just like a party. And one thing, my mother wasn't my first director. My sister was, which is even more painful. Yes. And my sister was a little more stronger-willed than my mother. But the one thing it is about dancing is it is generational. We talked about that a little bit before. I did it with my grandparents. My first recollection of dancing was my grandfather and my father. And we did this thing where it was like my grandfather, my father, my uncle, myself, and dancing in the living room. And it was just like a fun, it was great. That's what a lot of us try to instill with the kids. That FDF is this event, it happens once a year, and it's phenomenal because it brings us all together. But dancing's a little bit more than that. And it impacts your lives. Like, we just went to a baptism this last weekend in Fresno. The parents were all dancers. Their kids are dancing, but we danced with them, at the baptism. And that's the coolest thing. And these are relationships that we've fostered for years. And that's kind of what we want to instill with our kids. It's not just FDF one time a year, which is great. And they have their most vivid memories. They talk about it. But it's something they take with them the rest of their life.
You both have friends outside of the Greek community, I'm sure. Have you ever heard of anything quite like FDF and how it affects the whole community?
Not really. I always try to explain it to my girlfriends and stuff like that, and they're always amazed. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? I said, well, it's hard to explain that 2,000 people all get together in one place for the same reason. Just because they love either their culture, their traditions, learning how to dance, seeing each other, spending time together. And so, but I don't think I've ever...
No, I had a lot of contact with the Serbians and the Croatians. And they have their Kolo festival. They do this. It's similar. It's great. And that's kind of big, but something that is so sustained and as long as this, no, not really.
Why do you think it's lasted so long?
It's something we talked about.
I think this has been passed on,
yeah,
to be honest.
It's...
your mom loved it, passed it on to you. My parents felt it was important, brought us there, and now we're trying to pass on that love to the kids that we're teaching. And honestly, when you go to like a Glendia party or whatever, and you see them, and they're like, "Music's on, let's go dance," and they're like excited about it, and they love to come to dance practice. You know, they don't always like to work hard at it necessarily, but you know, they're excited to
They're
come,
kids.
and that's kind of what's, you know, and they are excited to go to FDF because, you know, and a lot of their parents grew up dancing, going to FDF, and now they're participating. So it's, you know, it's really cool to see that.
Yeah.
Generation to generation.
And that's what we see. We're talking about the Terpsichoreans. Like
Mhm.
these are people we danced with. What year? 95 was the last year we danced with them. We see them now, and they're bringing their kids. You know, and it's funny.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And the group that we teach now, well, the kids we teach now here in Oakland are kids I grew up with. We danced together in the 80s. And it's their kids that are our dancers now. You know, it is. It's very generational. I think that is kind of why it's so successful.
Yeah.
And continues.
Definitely. I want to. I don't have too many more questions unless there's something that you've thought about that you want to talk about. But I wanted to ask you about your sister because your mother mentioned her to me, but I didn't really want to ask her too much on camera. But could you just tell us a little about your sister? I think it would be nice to have her included in the.
Well, my sister was probably the one that. So I have with 4 siblings. My oldest sister and my brother, and then myself. I'm the baby, the golden egg, as they call it.
Definitely.
She was the dancer. She was my grandmother, epitomized. She's the Cretan word. So even though I look like I'm German or Irish or something, I'm Greek, but I'm from Crete. And when I was a little kid, I was blonde hair, blue eyed, and the Cretans are very dark. And I was very self-conscious because Modesto is a predominantly Cretan community. And my sister was gorgeous, beautiful, black hair, blue eyes, fair skin, but looked Cretan. And she danced, and that's the dances I learned. I learned very traditional Cretan dances, and she taught me. And it was my way. With her, I resisted. I fought it because it wasn't cool. But I guess in that sense, she helped give me the strength to feel like I belonged in the community. My mom very reluctantly didn't want to do it, but because the kids said, "Hey, Dina, can you please just help us out? You know, we don't have anybody that can do this." And so my mom did. And obviously that it changed everything. My mother got very involved and took over the program and kind of built up what it was. Before that, it was very small. I mean, we talk about FDF. FDF, we're talking with Peter, we were only 39 dancers when it started. Modesto's program there were like 12 of us. I was in the younger group, there were 6 of us or 7, and the older group was about the same. And it grew from there to like when my mom ran it, we had for a tiny community, we had 130, 140 dancers, 7 dance groups. My group that I took, I think I had 20 to 30 kids in that group at any time. And that was really my mom's doing, but it was a result of my sister being such a big part of the early part of it and then passing away. And she didn't want to do it, but we kind of forced her. And it was really a blessing because it changed everything.
Thank you for telling that because I kind of got some of that from your mom, but
she doesn't like talking about it. She gets very emotional. It's painful because the memory of it all. Because my sister was larger than life. She was this stunning girl that was involved, and she was a leader. You want to talk about leadership? She was very, typical Greek woman where she just like, I'm going to do this and you're not going to stop me. And I'm looking at you because somebody else is like that. And that was it. I mean, that was the elegance of my sister, was that it was just a natural, that's who she was. And she wasn't going to change for anyone. And she was going to do it. And she loved it. Like dancing, she loved dancing. You watch her dance, it was her and Antonia Lagavardos, these 2 girls, just both of them, beautiful Cretan women. To watch them dance, phenomenal, inspiring. And that's it. I wouldn't be dancing if it wasn't for my sister. Like I said, my mom bribed me, but my sister dragged me, sometimes by the ear. And look at, after that, I mean, I started directing. I've been dancing, since 1980 at FDF. And I've been directing since 84, 85.
That's amazing.
And would never have done any of that. I mean, I changed my whole life around dancing sometimes,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But your years, the year ends up being from FDF to FDF.
Yeah.
not necessarily, oh, it's January, but it's like, oh, we have to start thinking about what we're going to do next year for FDF.
Does it affect how you celebrate the holidays? I wonder.
Oh, yeah,
about
everything.
A little bit. Just
Come on.
kind of. You have to think about dance practice and all of those things.
Vacations,
Making costumes,
everything.
Things like that.
So do the kids rehearse during Christmas vacation, Christmas break?
Oh,
winter
yeah.
break?
That's a good excuse to have extra practices.
Because they're out of school.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's
kinda
also
wonderful.
nice because it's not only the dance portion, it's also teaching them the other pieces. We try to teach our kids how to embroider their costumes this year.
Oh, yeah. She's done a phenomenal job
Oh.
with that.
So,
She, not only that, we sing, we do all these things, but that was one thing that was almost a lost art. Is Ava has started teaching the kids when she was in LA
yeah.
to embroider their
My
own
girls,
costumes.
They embroider their own costumes and
That's
stuff like
great.
that. So
Yeah.
my mom helped with that piece a lot. She's into sewing and knows all those pieces. And that's actually interesting too, because my mom isn't Greek, but she's assimilated completely into it, and you would never know it. She's a costume judge, loves dancing, has
Yeah,
done the
I've heard a
research
lot
and
of-
all of that piece.
Oh,
So
yeah.
but she's also able to spread that out with other people too, and teaching them those skills like taught me how to knit, all those things. But
I love that you're keeping that going. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Uh,
But I mean, they were like hesitant, but we sat down and we taught them how to do cross stitch, and they did a little bit on their aprons that they wore at FDF
Oh.
on their costumes.
And-
So it gives them pride that they did something on their own costumes.
That just reminded me too. All the boys in my mother's group, we were all disavowed by our fathers because we embroidered our costumes. And the Greek father's like, "What are you doing? You're a boy. You're a man. You're not supposed to sew."
But that also brings you together, because then you
Yeah.
have like sewing parties, and you're again doing one more thing together. And
But not for Greek fathers to
I
see their
know,
sons
but-
do
No.
that.
I
Yeah.
can see where that wouldn't work.
We didn't care, but it was good times. Yeah.